So for this week's video on comic book concepts, and because so many people had asked for it, what I want to do here is have a discussion on Unstoppable Colossus. Now because this involves Colossus gaining the power of the Juggernaut, I want to begin by providing some information on the history of the Juggernaut's power, how it relates to the entity known as Cyttorak, and the events that led into Colossus gaining the power for himself. So looking at New Excalibur issue number 14 from 2007, what Marvel tells us is that during the early days of human history, Cyttorak existed as an entity but was viewed as a god and worshipped by differing human tribes. Now a distinction to make here is that this time period is around 1,000 years prior to the current day in Marvel Comics. What this means is that where mutants were just beginning to emerge, the Inhumans had already been created and beings like Apocalypse were roaming around. This period in human history represents a time when humanity still believed in deities who had some influence on the planet Earth. However, for reasons that were never explained by Marvel or within the comics, Cyttorak was banished from the earthly plane to a pocket dimension called the Crimson Cosmos. Now from here, in Iron Man Volume 3, issue number 22, what we're told is that during this period following Cyttorak's banishment, he along with several other entities came together, forming a group called the Octessence. Designed to be a contest to determine which of the group was the most powerful, in order to determine a winner, each member of the Octessence created an artifact that would be stored on Earth, and when the artifact was touched by the hands of a human, a spell would be triggered, resulting in others being drawn to the remaining artifacts, with each being taken and allowing for the members of the Octessence to engage in a battle with one another using their avatars. Now the issue that we face here is that Marvel does not tell us why some humans are drawn to the temple and others aren't. Instead, Marvel simply just says that once the artifact is touched, the spell begins. Now the start of this ritual came with X-Men issue number 12 and the backstory of Cain Marko and Charles Xavier, as it was written by Stan Lee and drawn by Jack Kirby. Coinciding with the Juggernaut's first appearance, while it's only in a short flashback, Marvel establishes that during their time serving in the Korean War, Xavier and Marko had discovered a temple located in Asia, which had been made to honor Cyttorak. Investigating the ruins and discovering the Crimson Gem hidden within, where Xavier had warned Cain not to touch it, Cain ignored this warning and after picking it up, recited the now famous words, "Whosoever touches this gem shall possess the power of the crimson bands of Cyttorak. Henceforth, you who read these words shall become forevermore a human Juggernaut." Now focusing on the Juggernaut's abilities, while possessing the Crimson Gem of Cyttorak, Cain Marko is essentially the representation of Cyttorak on Earth and is effectively immortal. In addition to this, where different writers have depicted it different ways, Juggernaut's strength largely ranges from being on par with the Incredible Hulk in his base form to being limitless. Furthermore, because Juggernaut's durability is virtually unrivaled in that he was able to withstand a blow from Thor's hammer without any effect, his hammer protects him from telepathic attacks, he's invulnerable to diseases, possesses a healing factor, has the ability to generate a force field around himself, and once he starts moving in any direction under normal circumstances, it's impossible for anyone to stop him. Now the reason why I say under normal circumstances is because there have been instances where an earthbound being has been capable of knocking the Juggernaut out, stopping his movement, or outright overpowering him. This first instance happened during the Onslaught saga. To sidetrack for a second, following the events of Fatal Attractions, which focused on Magneto and his acolytes launching an attack against the X-Men, when Magneto pulled the adamantium out of Wolverine's body, Xavier shut Magneto's mind down, believing that he was beyond redemption. Following this, because Xavier had suppressed his frustration with humanity's refusal to coexist with mutants, these themes came together with Uncanny X-Men issue number 322. While the conflict happened off-panel and we weren't shown what took place, the story did provide us with the Juggernaut simply landing in Hoboken, New Jersey, completely knocked out. While he did wake up and battle the X-Men, following his conclusion, Juggernaut revealed that not only had he been stopped by Onslaught, but during their battle, he'd been knocked across the country, a feat that was previously believed to be unachievable. However, the most notable instance of Juggernaut being stopped in his tracks came during the events of the Incredible Hulk issue number 456. Centering on Apocalypse capturing Banner in order to turn him into the Horseman War, after being successful, Hulk emerged similar to his World War Hulk appearance, and that he possessed some personal armor and weaponry. Now where a lot of this was designed to add a more intimidating appearance, the benefit of Apocalypse's modifications came in that Hulk did not have to rely on anger to increase his strength, speed, and durability. Instead, his speed and durability were enhanced to the same levels as Juggernaut, and he was able to increase his strength to match and overpower whoever he was fighting at the time. Furthermore, because the story focused on Hulk's friends attempting to bring him out from under Apocalypse's control, they had contacted the Juggernaut for the purpose of attempting to overcome the Hulk. However, during the battle, Banner was able to overcome the Juggernaut using his strength enhancements by stopping him in his tracks and knocking him across the Sahara Desert and into Cairo. Now, to continue this trend of Colossus gaining the power of the Juggernaut, while they have had several battles over the course of their respective histories, I want to actually shift our focus away from Cain Marko and to Colossus himself. To sidetrack for a second, this bit of information actually comes out of the 2011 story Fear Itself. Written by Matt Fraction with contributions from Stuart Immonen, Scott Eaton, and Steve McNiven, Fear Itself centered on Marvel's superhero community battling an entity known as the Serpent, which claimed to be the previous ruler of Asgard prior to being defeated by Odin. Providing a hammer called Skadi, which was similar to Thor's hammer Mjolnir in that only those found worthy by the Serpent could lift it, once it was picked up by Red Skull's daughter, she became the Herald of the Serpent, after which she released it from its underwater prison, leading to 7 more hammers falling to Earth, each one being picked up by a different character from Marvel Comics who was transformed into one of the generals of the Serpent. Regarding the Juggernaut, after picking up one of the 7 hammers, he was transformed into Kurth, the Breaker of Stone. Because the 2008 story Manifest Destiny focused on the city of San Francisco, rejecting the Civil War Initiative and providing a safe haven to the X-Men, after becoming Kurth, Juggernaut launched an attack on the X-Men's base of operations in Utopia, a small island off the coast of San Francisco proper. Seeking to defeat Cain by usurping his power, Colossus, Kitty Pryde, and Illyana Rasputin traveled to the Crimson Cosmos to speak with Cyttorak. Arguing that Juggernaut had betrayed Cyttorak by taking up allegiance with the Serpent while continuing to wield the power of the Juggernaut, Colossus, Illyana, and Kitty Pryde offered an alternative. Strip Cain of the Juggernaut's power and provide it to Illyana, who in turn would defeat Cain in the name of Cyttorak. Now, where the intention was to have Illyana become Juggernaut, instead of letting this happen, Colossus took her place, seized the gem for himself, and was transformed into the unstoppable Colossus. Now, in this moment, what Marvel had done was essentially written themselves into a corner. What I mean here is that for those of you who have not seen my video on Colossus, which you'll find in the description, his mutation of organic metal skin allows for resistance to all modern weapons up to and including nuclear explosions, extreme temperatures of hot and cold, most magical attacks, and possesses superhuman strength, speed, and durability. However, after being provided the powers of the Juggernaut, these abilities were enhanced and Colossus was given new powers, making him quite possibly one of the most powerful mutants on the planet. The reason why is because the helmet of the Juggernaut serves to protect from telepathic attacks, and the Gem of Cyttorak provides all the same powers of the Juggernaut, meaning that during this time, Colossus was immune to the effects of magic, telepathy, telekinesis, conventional weapons, planet-shattering explosions, and diseases. He also had no need for oxygen, food, or water, and once he began moving in any direction, he couldn't be stopped unless he stopped himself, and the only Earthbound individuals capable of overcoming him were those who could manipulate metal and people who could warp reality. In addition to this, because Colossus was empowered by the gem, these varying abilities also came with a desire to carry out acts of destruction and chaos in the name of Cyttorak. Now, while Colossus was able to combat these urges for a time, the issue Marvel faced was this. What do you do with a character that's so powerful that they can only be challenged by individuals of the highest order? And how can you write their stories in a manner that makes them interesting? In truth, this wasn't largely possible at the time, and that much like Franklin Richards, any foe the X-Men encountered barring cosmic entities could have easily been challenged and defeated by Colossus. And so following the conclusion of Fear Itself and going into Uncanny X-Men Volume 2, under writer Kieran Gillen, emphasis was placed on keeping Colossus as a background character, and that the first arc focused on Sinister facing off against the X-Men, with Colossus essentially standing around and doing no real fighting. Recognizing the issue that came with this kind of situation almost immediately, over the course of the next several issues, Kieran Gillen set about returning Colossus to his status quo. Beginning with Uncanny X-Men Volume 2, Issue number 5, Kieran introduced Tabula Rasa, a kind of sphere in Montana that used to be home to 5,000 humans, but was replaced with a temporal anomaly that isolated the interior from the rest of the world. While the goal of the X-Men was to investigate what had caused the situation to unfold, Illyana was taken underground by a group of monsters. Now, where Colossus went into the tunnels to save Illyana and most of the events took place off-panel, after she had come to, the cave was filled with body parts and Colossus had transformed into a monster. Now, the reason why Kieran included this was to both go towards the reason for Colossus looking to cast off the Juggernaut's power, but also establish that as long as he gives in to the power of the gem and succumbs to his darker side, his physical form will come to reflect the essence of what it means to be a harbinger of Cyttorak. And so where Illyana was able to restore Colossus to his normal Juggernaut form by helping him regain his mind, Colossus eventually had himself locked up due to the power he possessed and his inability to control it. Now, because this served the purpose of removing him from the equation, Marvel didn't return Colossus to the landscape as an active member of the X-Men team until the Avengers vs. X-Men storyline. During this time, and with the Phoenix Force imbuing Scott Summers, Emma Frost, Illyana Rasputin, Namor, and Colossus with its power, writer Kieran Gillen set in motion the events that would see Colossus lose his Juggernaut essence, returning him to his normal mutant form. Because Peter's time as one of the Phoenix Five, as well as the Avatar of Sidorak, made him immensely powerful with a need to destroy, for the most part, his actions saw the deaths of countless humans in the name of creating a better world. Looking to Illyana as a comfort, instead of coming to his aid, she revealed that when she'd offered to become Sidorak's avatar, she had known Colossus would take her place instead. Now, where the goal of this was to goad Peter into becoming as angry as possible, the other half of this reason was revealed when Illyana transported Colossus to Limbo. Now, to sidetrack for a second, as a mutant with the ability to travel through dimensions and time, Illyana rose to prominence in Marvel Comics during the Inferno storyline in 1988. Where the story saw her giving in to the demon forces of Limbo, embracing her darker self, and opening a portal to Manhattan, following its conclusion, Illyana became a sort of ruler of Limbo in that whenever she was there, she could manipulate the very fabric of that dimension, achieving any effect she desired. But because the experience left her scarred, for Colossus always viewed her as an innocent child, allowing him to experience what it was like to be possessed by another entity, fall from grace, and become a demon himself, went towards helping Colossus to understand that Illyana was not an innocent child anymore and that the events of Inferno had scarred her for life. To this end, with the two engaging in battle with one another, Illyana was able to cast off the powers of Sidorak, returning Colossus to his normal mutant form, but not without a betrayal of his trust, leaving the brother and sister isolated from one another, going into the events of Secret Wars, leading into all new, all different Marvel. With that being said, we're going to bring this video to an end, and make sure you guys post a comment down below and let me know what character or concept you think we should talk about for next week's video on comic book concepts. And I will catch you guys later. Peace.